A quick message from today's sponsor, iMobi again. If you know me well, you'll know that I endorse backups like there is no tomorrow. And so when iMobi gave me AnyTrans to promote, I was really excited to try and get you guys to back up your data because it's very important. The AnyTrans software can be downloaded on either PC or Mac and has an easy to use interface which adds to other tools as well. It also makes transferring files from Android to Mac a lot easier. If you've ever tried to do that kind of thing, you know exactly what I mean. But I urge you to check it out with the link in the video description below. Enjoy the video, guys. Just praying that I'm in focus at this point. I want to tell a story because I hardly do that on this channel anymore, and it's something that I feel I need to do. I need to express myself in some kind of cinematic process that encompasses a few stories and kind of guides a few people on a few things. So hey guys, my name's Ryan Thomas from Feltech, and this is probably one of the sketchiest computers I've ever used. I want to preface with a couple of things. I'm a computer technician, and so I'm kind of used to building computers all the time. I realise that this is not an amazing computer. I'm not an idiot. I've been doing it for basically a decade at this stage. And yeah, I know my stuff. I've had hundreds of computers. A lot of people give me crap about having a Mac Pro. Cool, I'm still a technician. I still probably know more than most people about computers. And because I have a Mac Pro, just to say, this is not my editing computer, this is not my daily, and therefore this is kind of why it's like it is. So I kind of want to tell a few stories when it comes to this computer. And to start with, I'm going to talk about the least interesting aspect. That is the RAM, CPU, and motherboard decision-making process. So we've got an i5-2400 at, I believe, 3.2 or 3.4 gigahertz, which is stock clock, with 8 gigabytes of DDR3, like 1333 megahertz RAM, and a motherboard that I could not remember the name of even if I tried. This thing is the most basic setup for gaming. It's like a Sandybridge i5, it's super old, it's pretty low clock, and of course the memory is fairly low clock as well. The whole thing is pretty basic, and that's what I love about it. It's so simple. It cost me like £50 total, and it really did make the world of difference over my Core 2 quad setup that I had previously. I believe a lot of this stuff came out of old Dell refurbished units, so I feel like the CPU did definitely come out of an old Dell desktop. And then of course we've got like the cheapest value select RAM, like that heat spreader. It's just so value, and I love that. Is it fast? Absolutely not by any stretch of the imagination. And it does struggle even in some games, but it's something that I love about it. It's just so simple. The best bit about it is that I bought it and then it only came with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So I sold that, bought the 8 gig of RAM kit, and yeah, it's been great. Next up is the power supply. Now I have just swapped this out and I'm going to be re-swapping it, and I'll tell you about that later on in the video. But I've got an EVGA 600 watt 80 plus power supply in here, which is by far probably the most overkill thing in this entire setup. Like this whole setup probably consumes 350, 400 watts at most. And this is just a power supply that I've had in 2 or 3 of my old systems that I've kept around because I didn't really see the point in buying and selling because it's so heavy and it would have just cost a lot to send in the post. I really like this power supply for the simple fact that, again, it's so simple, it's cheap, and it kind of just works. But I can tell you a quick story about the one that used to be in here. That is a Corsair CX7 something M, which is a semi-modular power supply that is so funny because it was in a mining rig that I got like over 5 years ago now, and it powered like 3 7950s, and then it was in my brother's computer for a while, then it was in one of my best friend Ross's computers for a long time, then it was back in my computer, then I had it as a spare on the test bench, so it's definitely traveled around like a lot of the other components in this build. Next is the storage solution. So we've got a SanDisk 240 gigabyte SSD. It's pretty simple. It's been in so many different computers at this stage. It's been in my 7700K rig, my Ryzen 7 rig. It's been in a couple of laptops, and it's also been in my server. So it's a great little SSD, and it just works. You know, it's cheap and cheerful. It's not M.2. It's like 500 meg read and 300 write or something. But it works, and again, I love that. It's so cheap, it's like 40 or 50 pounds for 240 gigabytes. It's pretty nuts. Then the hard drive is a little bit more interesting. As you can see, it's just flopping around in there, literally like the opposite of what you're meant to do with hard drives. This thing is a 1TB drive from my cousin Mailer's laptop, which stopped working and was very slow, and it just became so buggy that I am now using it as a games drive. Sometimes I have to reformat it because it does corrupt some files. It's really not the newest of drives, and it's 5400 RPM, but it's 1TB. And you know what? It does the job because I don't need my gaming PC to be hugely reliable. And yeah, she's now got an SSD and seems to be a bit happy with the speed, although the rest of the system could do with an upgrade. I'll link her Instagram because she's started a clothing company, and maybe she'll sponsor a couple of videos, maybe she'll advertise, I don't know. I'm going to save the best till last, but the graphics card is the next most important and most fundamentally interesting things about this system. It's a GTX 650 Ti boost, and if you know anything about these old cards, you'll know that the 650 Ti boost with 2 gigs of video RAM, it's actually a significant amount faster than the GTX 750 Ti, and that's because the boost means that this thing is a lot closer to a GTX 660 than you may think. It's actually a heck of a lot more powerful than a 650 Ti. And this Twin Frozer 3 GTX 650 Ti boost was the first aftermarket card that I ever purchased with my own money that cost like full RRP at the time. Now this thing churns through most games. I play at 1080p. It's really not that powerful, but it does the job. And I usually just play CSGO and Dirt, and it even seems to get through those tasks no problem. This card has been in my mum's computer and my brother's computer. It's been in my old computer. It's been in SLI with Ross's 650 Ti boost. It's just a little beast. It's so reliable, and of course with that cooler it means you can overclock it a little bit. Uses basically no power, and the DisplayPort port, to my detriment, I found out that it just doesn't work. So on the desktop it's perfectly fine, and in windowed games it seems to work, but as soon as you put a game in full screen it just blacks out and just refreshes the monitor constantly. So I've had to know that I can't use that DP port anymore, and I have to use the either HDMI or the DVI ports. And yeah, this thing does still support VGA, so technically it still does analog video. Next up, I've kind of bundled these two together. They're probably the most interesting things about the whole system. First is definitely the cooling that goes on in here. So we've got an H100i, and that's an original H100i, not quite the H100, but still pretty original. It's kept up pretty well. The fans are, I believe, in a huge box of fans that I've got lying around as a system builder. And you'll know that if you're a techie and you build people's systems, you get a lot of otherwise useless fans. Like the client will want to get some RGB stuff or some better looking and quieter fans, and you'll get all the duds. So we've got like a few BitPhoenix fans here, NZXT, Fractal, and some Fantex fans from an old tower cooler that I have lying around. And yeah, they just all went in there because I thought, why not? The system's going to get pretty warm. It's not incredibly new or power efficient, and it's cooled everything just fine. This thing is a monster when it comes to cooling. I actually used the fan controller that's part of the case. It was just kind of there, so I thought, why not use it? And this case is the first aftermarket case I bought, which was, again, over half a decade ago at this stage. It's a Phantom 530. Has so many mounting points for everything. I'm pretty sure the drive cages are either lost or in my attic, and we've just got room for so much in here. It's my favourite case ever. I really like the way it looks. This one's pretty battered, but the overall way that it looks and it works, and the ease to build in, cable management tie downs, everything. I love this case to bits. You can even fit a 360 rad on the top, which was not very common at the time for mid towers. And the story of the side panel window, the reason you clicked on this video, is that I got really angry in my state of a testosterone-filled 13-year-old boy, and I threw a power supply that I had up in the air, and not knowing that the side panel was off and on my floor in my bedroom at the time, it landed straight on the plexiglass, cracked, and I think I've done a pretty good job with some Capri Sun boxes to cover that up. The computer doesn't get too dusty, considering the dust that you see in here is basically dust from components that were in previous systems. As you can see, the motherboard is basically spotless, which is what's been in here for the longest amount of time. So the H100i does cool the CPU fairly well, and because it's all linked to that one fan controller, all I do is just flick the toggle switch on the front of the computer and it just turns all the fans to either medium or max, and at quiet it's really not that loud, but on max volume it does make a bit of a noise. This case is not perfect by any means, and as you can see, I've done pretty much nothing to help the cable management. I just threw the hard drive in there and just let it do its thing, but the computer's barely moved. So yeah, for those of you who still know what CDs and DVDs are, there is an unused DVD reader in the thing, and I don't even know if it works, but it's there because I lost the drive bay cover, which I should probably get another one at some point, but I mean, I don't really care. The DVD drive isn't using up any extra space, it's just kind of there. And that's my computer in a nutshell, really. It's just there. It just works, just does its thing. It runs Windows 10 for the simple fact that I like to play Forza Horizon 3. If I didn't play that game, then I just really wouldn't use Windows 10. I really don't like Windows 10, but I find it to be just a nuisance at the best of times, but it's kind of what we've got to deal with. I've worked on in excess of 100 computers, and I'm only 19. This thing is not my pride and joy by any means. It hasn't got these crazy cables. You know, last year my system had like an i7 7700K, GTX 1080, then I moved to Ryzen 7. I was a real proper enthusiast back then, but these days I'm just kind of getting on with what I've got and using my Mac for all of the important tasks. And I tell you what, it's never been more fun. I'm going to be upgrading this computer soon. Didn't know if you guys really wanted to see a video on that. I'd like to do a more in-depth one, and I might live stream it, get Callum to help me out and stuff. That would be super, super fun. And I know that you guys really want to see more PC content, so this is Sandybridge. I've also got Core 2 quads. I've got some Haswell stuff, and I can really go in depth with some more PC builds, do some benchmarks and stuff. This computer doesn't perform amazingly well, but it does me at like roughly 120 FPS for CSGO, which is what I like on my 144Hz monitor. I ran a few other benchmarks, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty useless for people who play AAA titles at 1080p, but for people like me who just want to play CSGO, it's just fine. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you really enjoyed this video. It's been really nice and chill, and I've really enjoyed making it. My name is Ryan Thomas with Failtech. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do follow my social medias because it helps me out, and thanks so much to my patrons for your amazing continued support. Please do like, dislike, follow and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. My name's been Ryan Thomas with Failtech, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.